Hello and welcome to Muse Jam Session recording 204. I'm here in the Adobe San Francisco office and I found the noisiest part to be in. Everyone stops just outside my door and says hello, so hopefully it won't be too disturbing. This is a fun session. It's Adobe Muse tips and tricks. I had planned on actually doing 2 of these sessions, but I've got a really good suggestion from a user to focus on a different topic in 2 weeks, and that's how to create multilingual sites. So I need to do a little bit of research, but I really want to jump on that. So I'm going to see if I can be a little quicker and go through some of the tips and tricks in just one session today and save 2 weeks from now to focus on multilingual sites. So with that said, if you have used Muse to build out a multilingual site, I would love if you would reach out to me. You can send an email, so Dani@adobe.com. Don't spam me, but if you want to talk about how you did that, how you set it up, just give me feedback. I'd love to hear how you have solved the problems. I have some ideas, but I'd love feedback from other folks. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump on in here. I'm going to use some slides that I put together just to remind me as we go along. So tip number 1, let's see if I can make this a little bigger. Tip number 1, it's kind of an oldie but goodie, to use Inline Glow to colorize PNG graphics. Now, many of you use SVG graphics, and the beauty of SVG is it's scalable vector, it's resolution independent, it's really nice and light. But if you wanted to apply colors to SVG graphics, you'd need to probably jump into Illustrator, change those colors, and then jump back into Muse back and forth. So given the dynamics of your own design, if it's reasonable, using small PNG files that can be colorized is a nice kind of quick workaround to that. I'm using a site today. This is actually called Pure. It's a template. I bought it on ThemeForest because I was curious about it. In fact, what I had done is showcased a site that used this template, not knowing it was a template, in Site of the Day. So it's always hard for us to know what is a template and what isn't. But I admired the site, so I went ahead and bought the template. And we're going to play around with it a little bit today. So let's say I want to add icons to this site. I'm going to go ahead and jump out and grab some icons. So Muse Themes sells a really nice social icon set, and they deliver those as both PNG and SVG. So I'll come in here and I'm just going to grab some of these real quick. Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'll go ahead and open those. And I'm going to place them on the canvas. They might be rather large. Let's see. If I click and release, it's a little too large. So let's just try to press and drag in a reasonable size here using my grid layout. So just some icons. I'm making them a little larger than I should, just to exaggerate our point here. Now, I will tell you this, the Muse team were kind of ruminating around the idea of having an easier time to apply styles, whether that's color swatches, graphic styles, paragraph styles. We've got some nice ideas in mind. But in the meantime, it's a little, takes kind of a few steps to set up paragraph styles and graphic styles, but they can be pretty powerful. So what I'm going to do is come into one of these items, and I'm going to go ahead and define an effect for the item. So in the effects pull down here, I'm going to select Glow. Again, this is a back-ended kind of tip that came from someone in the community quite some time ago. But what you do is you select Inline Glow, and you can choose a color from your swatch set. Let's say I'll go with this burnt orange color. From an opacity standpoint, I'm going to set it to be 100%. For blur, I can set it, I think, to a max of 250. You'll want to go ahead and set that maximum value. And then the trick is to set inner glow. What that will do for objects of a reasonable size. So if it gets to be too big, that blur of 250 or one of the values, I think it's the blur, starts to not be able to reach the center of the object. But this one is about 78 pixels in width. Now that I have that set, if I want to be able to apply it really easily, I can come into the Graphic Styles panel and just go ahead and name a style. I could call this icon orange. And then if I want to vary it, I can come in and select those other icons, call it icon orange, but I can quickly go on in and just change that color if I did want to once I've set up that graphic style. So it kind of minimizes the number of steps I'd have to go through to apply that. All right, one down. Next trick, kind of related, to easily switch in the color picker between RGB and HSB. There was a time, maybe it was 2 years ago, maybe 3, that Muse changed our native color swatch panel to be a common panel that was used across applications. And I feel like we kind of lost something when we did that, in that it was harder to come in and set color values. So if I go to, actually, let's just create a container here, and I'll go to the fill drop down and select a color. What you'll notice is I have HSB here on the left, but it's hard to define a gradient. So if I came in and chose this shade, actually I've already switched it out, I think. The default usually, I believe, is RGB. So with that default state, here on the right-hand side, there's this cute little toggle. If you wanted, I mean, I studied the color wheel at one point in my life, but I do not remember exactly how the values that lighten and dark an object in the RGB range, let's say. So going to HSB, hue, saturation, and brightness, makes it a lot easier to come in and just lighten up a swatch or darken up a swatch. So kind of a little hidden panel there that folks don't always recognize. See how fast we're blowing through these? Because they're simple. Create navigation dots for the slideshow widget. This one will take a minute. I actually learned this from a user as well. If I come on into Muse, and let's say I want to come to a slideshow, it is always fun for me to see how templates are built. They're usually gorgeous, the better templates, because they're beautiful visual designers. But it's interesting for me to see how people go about constructing things. And I was looking at this template, as I mentioned. You'll notice that the template is using a slideshow widget, and there's dots that are defined down here. If I zoom on in on these dots, this is kind of a standard way that you can navigate between slides. Sorry, I just jumped that around. So notice that I can come in here and click to the next image and the next image. And these have different states, these little dots. To be honest, I can't swear I know exactly how this designer built them out, but it's hecka complicated, in my opinion. So you'll notice if I go to one of these dots and I go to the file, so I pull down under file here, the designer is actually using a PNG image, so a resolution-dependent PNG graphic to represent these dots in different states. I think I have an easier approach that I want to show you. It's funny. I think it highlights a missing feature that we probably should add. But if I come on in, let's see, to the slideshow dots example, what I went ahead and did, just for speed's sake, is I dragged out of the widget library a slideshow widget. So I grabbed it from here, slideshow basic. And when I was there, I went ahead and set the default attributes to change to just have thumbnails visible. So I turned off previous and next, captions counter. I just have the thumbnails visible for what I'm doing. So I've got that default widget here. I'm going to I'm going to enunciate here. I'm going to go ahead and now place some images into the slideshow. I can pull down on File to Place, or just hit Command or Control D, which will bring up the file manager here. And I'm going to come into this directory where I have the 4 images that are showcased in that slideshow. So I'll select all 4 of those and click on Open. And the default attributes for the slideshow have the main area here, the main image, the hero image, set to scale to fill the container. And it's set to be full width, so that's all great. When I click and release, because it includes default images, Muse will automatically replace those with the images that I've just selected. So that's really good. What I want to do now is get that nice behavior with the dots. So I'm going to leave them off here on the side before I overlay them, just to make life a little easier. Let's go ahead and zoom in on this a little bit. I'm going to minimize my container. Let's go ahead and move these guys around. If you're new to widgets, they do take a little getting used to. They're incredibly powerful, but some things can be a mystery, like controlling the space between these objects. You would think it would be, I don't know, hard to do or press and drag. If I come into the spacing panel, you'll notice this is what determines the gutter between thumbnails, both height and width, just FYI. So what I want to do is get that round dot action happening. I'm going to come in and click on the thumbnail set until I have an individual thumbnail selected. I'm going to right click and select same because I want to select all of the thumbnails that are there. And I'll go on in and just set the values. So in fact, let me try this. If I just change one thumbnail, if you look at the flyout panel here, it probably has Edit Together selected, which is probably right down there where I can't see because I'm presenting. But since Edit Together is checked, I can just come to one of these thumbnails, and I'm going to go into the transform panel and just change the values to maybe 15 by 15 in height and width. So I have kind of that dot behavior. It might be a little small, but let's go ahead and bump it up just a little bit so we can see what I'm doing a little bit more. So 20 by 20. All right, I have little squares now, which are swell. I can control, as I mentioned, the spaces between them using the spacing panel. Let's get in a little tighter on these cute little thumbnails. So the next thing I want to do is come in and select just one, and I'm going to go and round out the corners. Now that's interesting. That's not doing Edit Together, so let's do that as a group set. So I'm going to right click again, and I'm going to select same, all of the thumbnails, set those to rounded corner values. And I can always exaggerate my rounded corners. I might want to set it to a corner radius of 100, which would be crazy because they're only 20 pixels by 20 pixel, but it's kind of a safe bet. All right, now that I've done that, I want to basically get rid of the photo and replace it with a graphic, but I don't want to browse for a file that I have to worry about. So what I'll do, I'm going to play with the sequence here. I'm going to go ahead and select a fill color. And we'll go with a light gray. I'm going to also go with a stroke color. We'll go with a heavier gray. This guy might not be talking to me. We'll see. Come on in. Got my fill color, my stroke of a heavier gray. Now you notice I'm not seeing a lot of action going on here. I'm still seeing that image. So this becomes a bit of the game. Unfortunately, I'm putting gray on gray, which makes it really hard to see what I'm doing. So let's go with a little different color for a second here. We're going to go crazy. We'll do a light orange. In the stroke area, we'll do a dark orange. What I need to do now, though, is handle the fact that there's that thumbnail there. What I want to do for that is double click on that thumbnail. Notice that when I double click, I go into a masking layer. So if I click on in here until I've selected that thumbnail, get into the mask, and then using your arrow keys, oddly enough, go ahead and move that image off so that it's outside the mask area. And you'll want to do that for each of these. You can also go in and control the states of the objects. So if I go into my states panel, I may have it that the normal state, let's see if I can get all of these guys going again. So select same thumbnail, and I'm going to go to the normal state. I want it to have that lighter fill with a darker stroke. Now, one trick also to doing this is even if you're doing a solid fill color, make sure you stroke and fill the objects so that they don't wiggle. What will happen is when I come to rollover, for example, and I fill with the same color, if I don't keep that stroke, the objects will just tend to jump around. All right, that'll probably do me. I'm going to come on in here again and click in. I see there's kind of a question coming up. I'm going to jump and see what those questions are in just a second. So moving these guys off, it's a painful hack, I know, but I now have those cute little dots, and I can move those into position. So I'm going to check the chat real quick. So there's a comment from Ollie that blank composition would do the same thing. That's true, but sometimes you don't want to deal with a blank composition. Things like there's scenarios where it's simpler to use a slideshow than to use a composition widget in a slideshow manner. We have a lot of tools that can achieve different tasks. Composition widget is the almighty most powerful widget. Many of you know we're in the thick of making that a fully responsive widget. It's going really well. I need you guys to come into the beta and help us test it to let us know how well you think it's going. But composition widget is hands down fantastic, but sometimes it adds some complexity that just a simple slideshow would make much easier. And so this is kind of a trick in that situation. But I agree, it could definitely cover the same concept if you need to. All right, I ate up a chunk of time there. Let's see how we're doing. Number 4, just command keys. There is merit, and in fact, if you guys embarrass me enough, I'll probably have to go in and update this. But there's merit to really studying some of the command keys that are out there. If you go to the Resources tab in the Adobe Muse website, so if you go to muse.adobe.com, there's a microsite there. And towards the bottom is some keyboard shortcuts. I have not updated this in a while. Well, I've updated it since June 14th. I may not have updated the text, but there's probably some merit to getting the freshest set of command keyboard controls if you're that kind of a designer. I definitely use a few that I thought were worth calling out. So notice this design. I was curious. A lot of the folks that make templates will deliver the template with a lot of breakpoints and let the designer delete the breakpoints that they don't want. A lot of breakpoints can be a lot of trouble depending on what you're working on. So let's say I jump back out here and I'm working on an individual page and I just want to check the selection state for an object. When you start to work with multiple breakpoints, having content across all those breakpoints, especially a site like this, can be really cumbersome if you're not careful. So one nice feature that I like is you'll notice I'm here on the largest breakpoint, and let's zoom out a little bit just to exaggerate my point. If you've ever done this, you're not alone, and that sometimes you go to click on a breakpoint and you actually end up invoking the close box there, which can be crummy. The other is, let's say you have an object that you've just placed on the canvas, and for the life of you, you can't find where it is on the other breakpoints. A nice trick is when that object is selected, you can hit Shift Command. If you're on a PC, it would be Shift Control, and then the number 5. That will take you to the next smallest breakpoint without changing your selection state. So Shift Command 5 jumps me to the next breakpoint and keeps that object selected so I can continue to fine tune it. I can hit it again, Shift Command 5. Notice that that object is moving to another location each time that I'm jumping through these breakpoints. So it allows me to easily tunnel down through the breakpoint bar. If I want to go back up, I'm going to hit Shift Command or Control 6 to take me back up again. So I really like that one a lot. I think it's pretty powerful. The other one is if you're jumping around pages, Command J will allow you to jump to a particular page rather than having to go to the site plan, figure out which page you need to navigate to and jump. You can just come on in here and type. This is not my design, but for example, there's a Portfolio 3 column. I can jump to that location. Another shortcut key is to hit Command M, which will take you back out to the site plan, which is awfully nice. You can jump between here and jump right back out to site plan. So definitely check out those keyboard commands if you're the type of user that likes to use keyboards to work more quickly. All right, trick number 5, copy paste with breakpoints to apply on a new page. And then I also want to show you some of the breakpoint support within libraries. So let's say I was working and God help me, I decided that this many breakpoints were really important for my work. As I mentioned, this is kind of a lot to deal with. But let's say I thought it was ideal. A really quick way to copy breakpoints from one page to another, from one document to another, is to select any one object on a page that has the breakpoints that you want. So to kind of accentuate this, I'm just going to select one little text box right here, clean design. I'm going to copy that to the clipboard. I'm going to hit Command or Control N to create a brand new document. I'll hit Return. I'm going to come on into this page and zoom on out a little bit. And all I'm going to do is paste. But when I paste, notice I have a few choices. I can paste the object back in place, so it would be in the same exact location as the X and Y location of the page I've copied it from. But notice the third option, paste and create breakpoints. So doing that, if I select it properly, notice that I have that cute little clean design bit of text, but I have all of the breakpoints from the document, the Muse document that I came from, or the page that I came from. I'm now free to delete that clean design text. It really is irrelevant to me, but I can go over and now jump between all of those breakpoints and have them align really easily. So that's one nice trick. Let's go ahead and close this document out and kind of redo this trick in a bit of a different way. Let's say alternatively, I've gone in and invested in this really nice grid. This is what really caught my eye about this site design. It has a really clean block design that's using vertical or horizontal, it is using resizing. I don't know what it's using. The official term is it is using responsive width and not responsive height and width with images, which allow you to get this really nice block behavior. So let's say I thought it was terrific and I want to reuse this easily throughout my projects now that I have it set up across, as you know, so many breakpoints. So I'm going to go ahead and jump on out and select the content that I want. So let's say I came in and grabbed just this first set right here. I can now add these two libraries and work with them easily. So if I go to the library flyout here, I've got, a couple different libraries. I'm going to go ahead and right click on here and I'm going to add to library, and I'm going to actually create a scratch library. So let me come in and do that. So we'll call that Dani Scratch. I'm going to right click here and add to the library Dani Scratch. All right, so I did that. Didn't seem like too exciting a situation. It's actually copying over now. So keep in mind what it's done is it's copied over all of these items, but it's also copied them over, including all of their breakpoint layouts. So we'll call this my grid. If I now switch over and open up a brand new document, so nothing on the clipboard in this case, but I just decide I want to start anew and I've got a brand new page. When I drag objects out of the library, if I just drag grid here onto the canvas, it's going to bring over the objects that you saw me drag onto the canvas. I'll come in and center a line here. That's kind of hard to do when you're pulling out of libraries. You'll also notice my page size is a little small. I could adjust that. But that worked well. But it really only brought over the actual breakpoint that I was on when I dragged the items into the library. Let's go ahead and do that one more time. But this time I'm going to use these little drag handles, the icon on the right-hand side, and press and drag that guy out. See if I can line this up a little better. And when I do that, it not only dragged over that current breakpoint, but you'll notice it brought everything else over as well. Now, this is where those magic keyboard commands are going to really help you out. I've brought these objects over, and of course, I need to resize my page a bit. But if I hit that Shift Command 6, for example, I can easily, with that content still selected, start to move it to the places that I want it to be. So Shift Command 6, make sure everything's centered. Shift Command 5 to swing back to my other breakpoints. Notice that it's starting to adjust the layout for narrower devices, and all of the optimization, all of the breakpoint definition for each of these tiles is retained when I dragged it into the library. Now, this is also true with Creative Cloud libraries, but it's a bit trickier. When you go to drag items out of the Creative Cloud library, it's going to do a check to make sure that all the breakpoints on the resulting page are the same as the ones in that source library item. And if they don't match up, it's not going to bring all of the breakpoints out for you. So we owe delivering that feature to the Creative Cloud library option. It's not available now. So you might want to rely on libraries, your own personal libraries here, if you want to take advantage of that multiple breakpoint on brand new documents. Okay, I'm going to check on Facebook Live and see how the world is going here really quickly, as best I can. All right, so if you have comments, I'm going to glance here as soon as I lower the volume there. So Alan is saying he could use some performance improvements. Truth is, every time we improve performances, things become more complex. So we're in the throes of working on fully responsive widget set. So for example, a composition widget that allows you to nest inside of it, an accordion widget that allows you to nest inside of that, a menu widget. And then we allow you to have that nested set work across multiple breakpoints. So yes, we improve performance, but then I think as your sites become more and more complex, we start to not see the value of that performance improvements. One of the best things that I think is a real advantage of the team that we're working with in the Bangalore office is that they have focused on performance. So for example, I can't talk about it. There are some performance improvements coming down the pipe. We haven't announced anything yet for our next release, but I do want to say at the same time, if you're going to try to do more, have more responsive widgets, for example, have more breakpoints, it's going to be harder to see that performance improvement. I would say you can never be too fast, never be too light, never be too stable. So it's always an area that's important for us to focus on. All right, so Jeff is saying that Upload FTP is not remembering your creds from moving from laptop to desktop. Yeah, I mean, I know, I agree. The thing is that for security purposes, we retain the FTP attributes in the Muse application, but if you change machines from a security standpoint, we don't remember them. I personally, I believe you can go to either, I guess if you're moving it back and forth, like let's say you're going to the office, going home, going to the office, going home, it's going to tend to forget it. It probably, the question is, what will we do that doesn't feel like a security breach? Can we include those FTP details in the file and allow you to transfer that file to someone else and give that control out? For example, if you sent a Muse document to the Muse support team because you're having trouble, it's a real vulnerability if they can go in and overwrite your site because the FTP attributes were retained. So sadly, taking a screenshot and putting it on a scratch disk is the alternative that I use. But I agree, it's laborious to get all those FTP attributes right. I guess I would wonder what you would suggest for an approach. Should we put a password on it so that if you don't know the password, you can't overwrite it? All right, I'm going to keep. You guys can moan about the slowness, but I think I've covered it a little bit. Okay, yes, Alan. What I would say is if you do not do fancy widgets within widgets, there's actually, I can't talk about it much because it's under private beta, but we're taking a number of different approaches. There is one dramatic change that we're making on the design canvas that will allow you to move more quickly. Go into the private beta, jump in, give it a try. Let me know what you think. But I think you will see some improvements there. Okay. Responsive standard widgets in the pipeline. Craig, there are. I'm encouraging you to come to museprerelease.com to check it out. We need your feedback. It's getting good. The features are almost complete, at least in our mind. So it's a great time to come in and let us know what you think of them. All right, one more question. So what's the difference between a rectangle tool and a rectangle frame tool? It's a good question. To some extent, I think it's legacy stuff from the days of, well, to be honest, well, it's twofold. First off, the original Muse team that built out Muse came from InDesign. So the mental metaphor that we used really emulated a lot of what InDesign has. The other truth of the matter is that we added that rectangle versus frame item, I believe, because of things like Adobe Comp that was blowing into Muse. So if I come in, for example, and add a picture here, unfortunately, I'm not going to probably give you a great answer. So notice I've placed that picture. If I double click now and delete the image, I have an image frame. If instead I come in and just create a rectangle, I can go grab that image again and just cut it onto the clipboard. I can come to this object and I can paste as background image. When I do that, I can define things like scale to fill or scale to fit the container. So there's definitely different behaviors. Someday, I would love to see where you can create image containers like this in a master, and then when you go to the individual page, just come on in, select an image, and in essence, fill that container. I know, see how tantalizing it is? When you put those on masters, though, they're not editable at a page level. So in some ways, I think it's a baby step towards that. But it was mostly really to just be compatible with other Adobe applications as content came in. Not the best question answer, but it's the truth. Create a terrific responsive thumbnail rollover. Okay, this one's a little more complicated. And I've never told anybody what I think about it, so y'all may shame me out of this. But if I come in to the live site, let's see, must be this guy. So the designer, as I mentioned, I was admiring this site. I really love the way these containers work really well, but they're kind of complex. So let's go in again, and actually we know how to do this. Let's go create a new document. I want to isolate just a little bit. I'm going to go grab that library section that I defined earlier, and I'll bring it onto the canvas. In fact, let's go in and get ourselves a larger breakpoint while we're here. So I'm going to create a new document. Let's go ahead and make this one 1400 pixels so we've got enough room to play. I'll come on into the document, and I'm going to grab this grid item, place it on the canvas. So don't get me wrong, my goal is not to pick on this. And if you're the designer that did it, come find me. I admire your work. But notice I've got these containers, and they have a really nice in-browser look. So if I come in and preview this page, I'll show you what I mean. So I've got these nice grid containers, and notice as I press and drag, the width of the images are reducing until it hits the next breakpoint. And if I roll over the object, I must have blown that one a little bit. I might have broken these. Let's go back and try that again. To be fair, I can't break it and try to show you what's better about my approach if I'm not fair. Let's try this again. Come on in here. I'm going to grab just a few of these to about there. Copy them. Swing back over and paste. We'll get these lined up a little bit more. Check out my smaller instances. Okay, so pretty good representation. So if you look at how this was constructed, let's preview it one more time because I do want you to see kind of the nice effect that's here. So there's just really nice, that's funny. It's just going to argue with me. I'm not sure why that is, but it is the perfect example for why this approach can be hard. Let's just take the real live file and preview it. So I think some of the complexity is the designer has some of the content on different layers. You'll notice by the selection colors, the red elements are on a top layer. There's rollover states that are on a different layer in the site design. And it just can be, if you're trying to come in and customize it, I find it to be a little bit hard. Come on, we got a lot to cover. I know this is not an opportunity for you guys to talk about how slow Muse is getting, because it doesn't make it better. Might make you feel better. Come on. You jinxed me. What a perfect time to get a sip of coffee. You have to be kind because you have to know that I'm running Zoom and I'm running Facebook Live and I'm doing a deck here. So don't pick on speed. I might have hung the application. See, you guys jinxed me. You did. Okay. So in this design, I just really admire this. So notice what happens. I get this nice rollover where the image fades and then the text becomes visible. And what's nice about it is as I'm resizing these containers, the text does a really pretty good job of staying where it needs to be. And as I change to other breakpoints, it continues to do a good job. But I find this to be really complex and difficult to try to work with. So let's try to do apples for apples. I know. I'm going to copy this guy and go on into that page. Actually, it doesn't matter. Let's just let this be. I'm going to move these guys out of the way. Let's go ahead and do another tip just to check it off. If you haven't used the vertical move handle, you need to. As you do responsive design work, moving content down on the page without having to select certain sections of content can be really powerful as you're starting to work with multiple breakpoints and moving content. So what I can do is come in and select the topmost object here and grab this vertical move handle and just drag the content down. Another way I can work if I want to select a certain section and delete it all, I can double click on the vertical move handle, which will select everything from that point and down and allow me to delete it. So definitely a feature, if you haven't noticed it here on the left, that you want to take advantage of. All right. Now that we've had that whole big dramatic lead in, if you look at the construction of these tiles, I've got a rectangle, notice here on the left, and if I drag that away and I look at the states panel, the rectangle basically has kind of that opacity fill, the white fill. Underneath that rectangle, I've got text, and the text goes from normal, rollover, mouse down, and active. So I think it depends on the opacity of the container on top of it. I was trying to dissect this and found it to be pretty complex. But as you roll over, the white background shows and the text becomes visible. As I mentioned, I find it to just be pretty complex. So I'm going to come in and grab some of these parts. Just going to grab the image in the background. I'm just going to place it. Now this is an image that's set to be full browser width. Let's go in and see if I can snag this other one. Notice to select here, I'm hitting Command on the Mac, and I'll click once. I'm at that rectangle level. See how I can see that in the states panel. If I hold the Command key and click a second time, tunnels me into the layer below that so that I can copy it and paste that on the canvas. All right, now I'm going to grab some text. So we'll grab this text here, copy it, going to escape, and I'm just going to create a clean text container. Now, the hard part is that text, when you work with it, pure text, it's going to want to be fluid width, basically. So if you set this to be a responsive container, the text is going to end up becoming narrower and wrapping and such, which can be really disconcerting if you're trying to have a lot of grids that go all the way down to, let's say, a phone layout. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this text block a second time. Let's vary out the text a little bit. Select all, copy, and I'll replace this here. All right, so the trick is, a couple things. See if I can pull this off. So the background image is really irrelevant here. What you want to do is select the container on top of it. And I'm going to go ahead and set, I have to think for a minute to myself. Now I'm getting nervous. I'm going to set a fill color of 100%. And I'm going to set the opacity. Notice where I am in my state here. I'm at the normal state. I'm going to set the opacity to, actually, I'm going to try effects. I know I'm getting nervous now. I'm going to set effects to 0 so that it in essence disappears. If I then go to the rollover state, and this is where I have to think for a minute. You guys have me nervous. If I come on into this guy, let's just see. What I want is for my text, let's just go back to our guide again. So there's no text, that's invisible, and then it fades in. Okay, so I can use that. When you play with the differences between fill colors and effects, I think it can be pretty interesting. So in the normal state here, I want the effect to be set to 0, which in essence makes it invisible. When I go to the rollover state, I want it to be visible again. So notice I'm selecting the rollover state, and I'll come back here, and I'm going to set it back to 100 again. In fact, I might try to go with that 100 set. I'll go ahead and change the fill color to be about 80%. So I get that nice transparent effect. So in my normal state, I see the background image. When I roll over, I can see the text. I can change the opacity if that's too much of a conflict with the font. And then active state goes back to the original state. I can also come in and set a transition if I'd like to have it fade between those states smoothly. But I guess this is the trick that may make everybody yell at me. But because this is text, as the width of the container reduces, you'll sometimes get a really bad rap. What I found is if you come in and change the text to actually be a system font. So it helps if you set your site to high DPI, so it's a higher resolution. But if you come in and select a system font, it's going to create an image. But the beautiful part about that image is that you can change the width or you can change height and width, and it will stay in line with the background fill. So let's see if I'm lucky enough to have pulled this off. I'm going to come on in and just get our world down to just this one image here. And I'm going to try to show you two different approaches to this image. I'm going to delete this bit here. If we go to the top example or the bottom example I'll use, I want to set both the image and the fill text to be responsive height and width. Okay, and then this one's just going to be responsive width. Let's see if I get away with this. I'll do a second instance of these guys so that we can kind of compare the behaviors. So yes, you're using raster images, image files for your rollover. It's the downside. Muse will automatically create SEO text or screen reader text or alt text for those images, even though I'm saving them out as image files. Let's just take a look at, I got a lot of breakpoints here, as we know, so I have to make sure I get to the right spot. But notice I've got my images. They're scaling in width at the top. See if they're width and height. It is doing a little bit of width and height as well. Let's make my life a little bit easier and just get rid of some of these breakpoints so I have a lot more clearance. Preview one more time. So the first example allows you to have that variable width, and now I have a misalignment of my text containers, which is going to be a bummer. But as I come in, the width is changing, and the text will tend to stay centered. If I change height and width towards the bottom, it will stay centered. And as I mentioned, if you set this to a high DPI site, so if I pull down on File to Site Properties, set it to high DPI, and click OK, you can, even if it's totally giving you trouble, you can grow your container a little larger than the graphic object in the background. But at that point, it's just easy to come in and change the text. So I've got my rollover states here. The text looks reasonably clean, and it's just easier now with just those two elements to make changes. Okay. All right, Krishna said, wow, must be a compliment. I'm not convinced, but Okay, Ollie liked it too. So I think that makes it a home run. Okay, moving right along. You know how magical the vertical move handle is. You know what? You do if you were following what I said just a few moments ago. Number 8. Show you a couple playful games with anchor tags. So anchor tabs allow you to easily navigate throughout a site. And there's a couple ways you can play with that. Let's see if I can effectively do this. I'm going to start new again, just to make life simple. I'm going to come to a master page. And I might have different content on each of my pages. First thing I'm going to do is come in and grab my anchor tool. I'm going to use a command key, just type A on the keyboard. I'm going to click and release to drop anchor, like a good sailor, on the left side of the site. I can't tell you why, but Muse really appreciates any extraneous content that you drop to the left of the page. Especially in the world of responsive, it just makes it happier. I think we have to give Muse credit for a moment, the fact that you're using a visual design tool to visually create anything you want, and Muse then takes responsibility for building that out as a fully responsive site across multiple breakpoints, to me is phenomenal, but there are some kind of funny rules about the web and ways that Muse implements certain features, I would agree. So I've got this back to top little anchor right here. If I now go into individual pages, let's say I want to add some navigation, and I'm going to go ahead and just add here. We'll call it top 1, 2, and 3. And I want this to be permanent, so I can just come on in and maybe give it a fill and let it be full browser width. Really nice looking text I got here. A little bit of spacing. All right. Okay, we'll give it a font. Something simple. Beautiful Gill Sans. Okay. What I want to do now is add other content. So this is kind of sitting up towards the top of my site. And when I select it, I want to make sure it's permanent or it stays there at the top. So I'm going to pin it. I can use left, right, center. It doesn't matter because this is going to always span the full width of the browser. Next thing I'm going to do is kind of add some stuff. I need to exaggerate it down a little bit. So we're going to call this section 2. Let's try to use that amazing type treatment I've got going on there. Oh, you know what? Better be careful. That's Gill Sans. It's going to be an image font. It's going to be a tragedy. I can see that because it indicates here that it's going to use a system fonts. Don't do it, Dani. Let's go with Bodoni instead. Copy that. Section 2. Why are you still yelling at me there? Interesting. I'm picking a lot of system fonts here today. I'm going to go up and go to the web font section and make awfully sure I pick something that's a web font. Okay. Let's go ahead and set this pretty far down. We'll call it section 2. We're not even to the fun part yet. And section 3. Okay, got my sections. What I want to do is have it such that when you click in the navigation, it takes you to those sections. So this is all standard. I haven't gotten to the trick yet. What I'll do is come on in and zoom in a little more tightly. Whoops, got a whole lot of anchors going on there. If I hit Command Z, it allows me to zoom more precisely. If I hit Command A, it makes a million anchors. So I'll hit A there. I'm going to call this 2. I'm going to type A again, call this 3. Okay, nothing very dramatic there yet. But what you'll notice is when I come up to the top of the page, I've set up anchors on that page. So I can come up here and select the word 1. And in my hyperlinks dropdown, I never set 1. So let's do this. Let's just call it top, 2, and 3. Okay, this will take you back to the top, take you to anchor 2, which I can see in the drop down. There's anchor 2, and I can see 3 is in the drop down. The magic, though, is that I also see top. If you remember, there is no anchor top on this page. It's actually on the master page. But what I can do is link to that, even though it's a master page item, link to it on individual pages. So with that, I'm linking all 3. I can make sure that that top anchor, so if I jump down here to 2, swing on down to 3, and then come all the way back up to the top, I just have one global anchor that I can apply on every page to take you back to the top of a page. So that's the first part of the tip. I'm going to look at chat. So Ollie's talking about a Persian website and how if you put anchors outside on the right side, it can behave oddly. The thing about anchors is you do have to test them a little bit. The idea is that notice how like I go to anchor number 3 and it just brings section 3 right here. Section 3 doesn't come all the way up to the top. And the rule with anchors is that an anchor tag is going to make that anchor just visible. So when I say 2, it's just going to bring it inside the frame of my browser. If I were to resize my browser here and ask for 3, notice it just brings section 3 in view. So it's important that you think of it as almost like a camera, a viewfinder. When you're dropping that anchor, it's going to resize that view until the anchor is visible, but you have to be careful about its placement and consistent with it for sure on the y-axis, I never know, on the horizontal, the vertical axis, because depending on where that anchor might be placed, it's going to move your site over oh so gently, which can be really annoying if it's not what you want to have happen. All right, that's kind of fun with anchors there, but here's another fun with anchors that I'll show you. I'm going to kind of come back into this document a little bit. There's a feature that we shipped, I think it was the last update, and we didn't really talk about it all that much. It's something that we want to do more with, but it's pretty swell. So I'm going to come on in here, and I've got my top 2 and 3. I deleted the other 2 and 3 anchors, so they're no longer linked there at the top. I'm going to come grab an accordion menu or accordion panel. So if I come to widgets and I select under panels, the accordion, drag that onto the canvas. Here's a fun fact. If I come to the second panel, let's say, and maybe I'll make it a little larger just to exaggerate this a bit, I can come in now with that good old anchor tool and drop an anchor inside the panel. I'll call it 2. I'll come on into anchor 3 here, and I'll grow this guy a little larger. Now notice I blew it. See how 2 is in the wrong place? It's because I didn't put it into the body. I put it into the head area. I'm going to try this one again here, do 3, and then I'll drag it where I should, which is kind of just, maybe we'll try it here on the left, but I don't want it in my way. I just want it inside the body of this accordion. Same thing with 2. I'm going to put it inside the body of the accordion. I can now say to the accordion, go ahead and close all and collapse it. And now if I come back to my top nav, I can grab that second and third anchor links, and look how kind of fun and magical this is. So here I am, I've got a nice accordion. If I click on 2, it's going to actually open up that section. Click on 3, it'll open up that section. So it allows you, if you're kind of clever about this, if I resize the page again, it'll close the accordion. It allows you to draw attention. You may want to bury content in this panel. It allows you to do that, but have call-outs within anchors to draw to that particular location. We are looking at or thinking about maybe kind of sort of possibly extending this to things like, let's say you have a composition widget with a previous and a next and triggers and targets. Perhaps there can be value to allowing you to define an anchor so that you can control when I click here, which part of a composition widget or another widget should be focused or open. So it's kind of fun, but that is shipping now. You can access it today. Okay, James says, I hear a lot of different opinions about designing mobile first versus desktop first. I have never met a good designer that starts file new and designs the smallest breakpoint. What I believe the world means when they talk about mobile first, it means as a designer, you need to think about your mobile clients first. If the site that you're building tends to be accessed by consumers, let's say people that are on the go, because mobile devices, those browsers are actually gaining a great deal of popularity and are used a lot more than desktop devices. Having said that, as a visual designer, I don't know how you could start with a mobile layout and then decide where am I going to shove additional content for tablet and desktop. So I think as a designer, you begin with the largest breakpoint with all of your content, because in general, you're going to show more content on the desktop, more on the tablet, and perhaps less on a smart device because people are on the go. So I think what it means is think about your clients first, mobile first in your design methodology. But when you're implementing the design, start with desktop and then delete or hide or minimize content. I can't suggest enough, though. I'm always in awe of how much thinking you have to do to really build a good responsive web design. Before you begin, I encourage you to take pencil and paper, any sort of sketching skill that you have, to think about every element that you're going to put on the site and what its behavior will be on each breakpoint. Doing that will allow you to build out the site more easily. Traditionally, we've also said start with your largest breakpoint, solve everything there, and when you have everything on the page handled, go ahead and add additional breakpoints. The engineering team's been working awfully hard in this next coming release on making sure that when you place content on a larger breakpoint, it behaves as it should on the other breakpoints. So I think you'll see those changes in behavior. It makes it easier for you to come in and add new content once you've added multiple breakpoints. But I still encourage you to kind of solve it at the largest breakpoint before you go further. So I got that. Any update to share on the hamburger menu widget? No, because I'm not talking about future-facing stuff. So no, but if you come on into the private pre-release, we could talk about it. Okay. That is it for Q&A here. I'm going to look at Facebook a little bit. So, sorry if I'm getting the pronunciation wrong, but Metmit is asking about the best way to deal with gorgeous 4K screen resolutions when you start your design. I would say, number one, use SVG every moment of every second that you possibly can, because SVG is resolution independent. It's going to allow the content to load very quickly on a 4K monitor. You can set your site for high DPI. I showed it a little earlier. You guys, I'm eating up all my time here. But if I pull that under File to Site Properties, setting something as high DPI does not really hurt people with low bandwidth. What happens is you can have double the width and double the height of resolution for an image. When you place it on the canvas and it's previewed on a device, the first thing that happens is it takes the standard resolution and loads it in the browser. And then asynchronously in the background, the browser, when it has the data for the higher res image, it's going to kind of seamlessly basically crisp up or improve the resolution of all of your placed images. So high DPI is a great way to go. The Muse application will look at the breakpoint that you're placing content on and look at the resolution that's appropriate. So you can put a very large image and not worry that on a phone, the media query will be loaded appropriately. Muse takes responsibility for that. The only exception is if I come in and I create a container. Let me just explain this. And I come in and I place an image in that container. So if I cut this and I come to this object and I paste it as a background image, and let's say this was a very large image, and I set it to scale to fill the container, Muse, if it has a lot of data, it does not know what you mean when you say scale to fill the container on a device-specific basis. So if I were to have this placed and I wanted it to be really small, because Muse needs to allow you to grow the browser to the largest size possible, it's not going to subsample this data for smaller breakpoints and smaller devices. So you want to be cognizant of that. If you do want to control it, sorry, we're going off a little bit into a tangent. If I like this image, but I'm concerned that scale to fill is going to mess me up, what I can do is copy this image. I can hide it on the current breakpoint. I can then go into, let's say, my phone layout, and I can paste that image. And on the current breakpoint, I can say hide this in other breakpoints. And I can come in here and I could go ahead and replace the image with a lower res version of this image. So generally speaking, Muse is going to take large images and optimize them for you, unless you scale to fill a container, and then you may want to hide and show different resolutions on different breakpoints. I'm gonna just try to answer some more questions real quickly, and then we should stop probably. So Sean says, what's the best way to create a hamburger mobile menu in Muse? What you want to do is go to muse.adobe.com. You want to go to the widget directory. And I never remember this the right way the first time. If I try menu, it's either menu or mobile. Like I said, I tend to never remember. Not seeing it, so let's try mobile. Long story short, as soon as I find this, let's see. Menu. Let's try menu here. Okay, sorry. This is where you want to go. So if you look for mobile menus, this is actually a Muse file. And in it, I give you sample layouts. There's about 6 different types, but it's all different examples of how you can have different mobile hamburger menus. What we are working on doing, and somebody tipped their hat there in the Q&A, is looking at how we can natively create a mobile hamburger menu that you don't have to nest a lot of different menus in, that is built for mobile responsiveness. I'll leave it at that, but for the moment, this is a great place to kind of hang out. You can download the source file just here in the preview if you'd like to look at those mobile menu examples. Okay, I'm going to stop. Thank you for spending another hour with us. In 2 weeks, my intention is to talk about how to go about building a site for multiple languages. Muse does not really have a formal feature for that, but there are some tips and tricks. I know a few, but I want to learn a lot more. So if you are someone that has built out a mobile site, and I'm sorry, not a mobile site, a multilingual site, and you'd be open to letting me take a look at your file, please reach out. You can, I would just send me an email and I'll tell you how you can upload your site so that I can take a look. I would appreciate it. So thank you everyone for your time. I will see you again in 2 weeks.